Okay, let's begin. My name is Lori Foster, and this is the IAVE Research Working Group on Corporate Disaster Volunteering webinar, our first of the year. Happy New Year to everyone. Happy February 1st. I have you on mute right now, but if you need to speak before we open it up for questions, you can raise your hand. You'll notice in your control panel there's a little hand. You can just click that. And let's get started with our agenda for today. First, I want you to see who is participating. In addition to our guest speakers, we have representatives from the CNA Foundation, Telefonica, Microsoft, Medtronic, Airbus, Hilton, and UPS. So in some cases, multiple individuals from the company. So when you ask the question, feel free to identify yourself. So today we are going to start with a presentation from All Hands and Hearts Smart Response. CEO David Campbell will start us off. Founder and CEO David Campbell will start us off. And we will also hear from Lauren Meldowney, Chief of the Volunteer Experience. We heard from All Hands and Hearts a few years ago, actually when many of you were not members of the working group. But since that time, they have merged with another organization and are offering new services. So I thought this was a good time to hear about volunteer opportunities for corporate employees with All Hands and Hearts. Following David and Lauren's remarks, we'll hear from Melissa Robinson of Hilton. She has just returned from Puerto Rico and will share her experiences with us. Finally, we have time at the end of our webinar for a roundtable discussion on what each of the members are doing. So I am going to unmute David and Lauren, and we will start with them.
Okay, good morning. This is David Campbell. Thanks for taking the time, and we appreciate the opportunity to share our story. Before I start a short slide presentation to give you an overview of our organization, just in terms of a personal background, I'm really an intersection of the two things that bring us all together. I had a corporate career that spanned about 40 years, including being CEO of 2 public companies and serving on 10 public company boards. Before 13 years ago, going to Thailand after the tsunami, and then really as a volunteer starting this organization, now All Hands and Hearts, which I've led for the first 8 years as executive director and CEO, actually became chairman when we brought in Eric Dyson as executive director and now CEO. But I've basically been a volunteer all that period of time. And my motivation in leadership of All Hands and Hearts has always been focused on 3 things. One, the physical work we do, like building schools in Nepal or helping people respond in Puerto Rico. The second is the powerful message we give to communities when volunteers interrupt their life to come and help a community. And I've seen that get communities back on the path to recovery in places as disparate as Ofinato, Japan, and Cedar Rapids, Iowa. But the third thing to me that's always been compelling is the impact that this work has on our volunteers. And during the course of this 2018, All Hands and Hearts will hit our 50,000th volunteer, and the impact we've had on those people's lives is really the most gratifying part of what we do. So with that quick personal introduction, let me start the overview of our relationships with corporations and how we like to work together. As you can see, our mission is, can people see my screen okay?
No, David, oh, here it is. Here it is, perfect.
Okay. So organization, corporate partnership overview, our mission and vision. Our mission is really quite relevant, obviously, to this working group to address immediate and long-term needs of communities, narrowly keeping our mission down to those affected by natural disasters. We do not work in refugee camps and so on and so forth. We believe and are now approaching 100 projects that we'll have done, that we have an unusual expertise in listening to communities and understanding the challenges that come about after natural disasters. and that we're developing both a strong staff, now approaching 150 full-time people, to couple with our strong alumni network, so we really have an ability to be an effective resource after major natural disasters. We've added the phrase smart response. We announced our merger with the Happy Hearts Fund, founded by Petra Nemkova. We announced the merger in November of 2017. We had started working together very closely in Nepal in 2015 and 2016, and decided maybe 18 months ago that we should investigate merging. We completed that and announced it in November, and we feel the combination gives us additional strength. Petra's story is a compelling one, and she brings significant recognition to us, and we think will advance, our total cause, really focusing significantly on rebuilding schools and international disaster situations, where we focus more on home recovery as our long-term projects within the U.S. And we really believe this entire field of disaster response can benefit from systemic change. And in addition to executing against current projects, we're anxious to be a voice affecting systemic change. Our definition of smart response is really listening to the communities, knowing what needs to be done, and moving very quickly to provide impact into these communities. My personal sense is challenging for them, and I think we need both to be faster in our understanding of what the support will be, and also faster in getting to the recovery phase, because I find that's where the greatest challenges lie, not as much in the response phase, but our great focus is trying to improve long-term recovery, have it start sooner, be more effective, communicate more clearly what will be able to happen, and develop the skills so we can lead long-term recovery projects. When we joined with Happy Hearts, we also picked a new logo, and really the four hands representing the four things that we're committed to, that we will respond quickly and effectively and thoughtfully, that our recovery operations, one of the phrases we now use is we come early and stay late. In the first weeks in Texas after Hurricane Harvey, we committed to stay over 2 years. We've made similar commitments in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. We're also very interested in resilience, both building resilient buildings that the schools we're building in Nepal, for example, that they're designed and built earthquake resilient schools as a way of enhancing their careers. And interestingly, in Nepal, we have a working women's Masons program, which is rather unique in the country of Nepal, to be training a series of half dozen women at a time in how to generate careers as Masons. And we recognize, I believe at any rate, that poverty is really the overwhelming problem, and disasters just hit the poor more severely than anyone else. And so we're interested in ways to have renewal be part of what we deliver to a community. It can be as simple as training people in English language, which we're bringing into the schools we're building in Peru and Nepal, or just bringing a lift to the community by other activities with them. So the 4 R's for us are an important part of what our mission is all about.
David, I'm sorry. David, do you mind pausing for just a moment? We have a question from our Medtronic individual, Letitia. I'm unmuting you, Letitia.
Oh, sorry about that. That was my mistake.
Oh, okay. All right. Back to David.
Anyway.
Sorry.
Okay. So just a quick touch. Petra's story, which you may not know, Petra is a supermodel who was in Thailand in 2004 with her fiance when the tsunami hit. Her fiance was killed. Petra was seriously injured. When she went back 6 months later to thank the people who had taken care of her, she was shocked to find that schools weren't rebuilt. And so she's taken on as her life mission, for the past now 13 years, to raise funds to replace schools for kids where their schools were lost through natural disasters. I was at an event with Petra in Miami the night before last, and her efforts have now resulted in 200 schools being built around the world across 10 countries, from Haiti and Peru through Nepal and Indonesia, etc. and it is her passion. She spends 80% of her time, again, as a volunteer, contributing using her celebrity and her passion and her impact to bring attention to this cause. I've given you a quick part of my background. Eric Dyson joined us as our CEO and Executive Director in 2013. He's brought significant professional leadership, and I think between us we have a very strong history of managing large organizations so that we can manage both the cash flow, strategic planning, and personnel demands of organizations as they've grown quickly. Just to give you some quick order of magnitude numbers, we would have finished our last fiscal year in August at a run rate of doing disaster work of about $7 million per year. But because of this onset of events of Harvey, then Irma, then Maria, we've more than doubled that scale, and we're now running at an expense level of about $1.5 million per month. So we'll do something in the range of $18 million of disaster response recovery over the next 12 months. We worked from the very beginning to be a transparent company, coming really from sort of my corporate background, but we're a charity navigator, 4-star rated charity. Really, I think sort of the highest levels on any rating organization. We were if you're familiar with NVOAD, the domestic organization, we were the NVOAD Member of the Year for 2014, and then again in 2017. There actually was an article that has gotten little coverage, but late in December, Global Giving, who manages Impact, combined their analysis with Charity Navigator's rating and produced a list of 10 out of the 10,000 charities that Charity Navigator rates, and they gave them their 10 for the highest combination of financial effectiveness and impact. And I was quite proud to have all hands be on the top of that list of 10 organizations. So all financials are on the website. The bios of all management are on the website. All 990s since our first year are on the website. And I think anything that I know that you can imagine you'd want to know about us has always been on the website since our first year. We've had an active social media presence, trying to have people understand who we are. Again, Petra helps bring some additional awareness to us. Petra, for example, on the Giving Tuesday, late in November, was live on Good Morning America, and therefore bringing the message of engaging volunteers and the power of volunteers to help and getting really national exposure. The combination of her presence and history and her story, I think, really will bring more attention, certainly to our organization, but also to the broad cause of volunteering. We look at our impact in multiple ways. On the top left here, you can see a picture of the school. I was at the dedication of the school in Peru the past November. In the early days after things like Harvey, we have 2 bases established in Houston, where mucking and gutting and getting hundreds of homes back so that they can start the recovery process. Depending on the event in Ecuador, we built permanent homes. In that case, showing the people how to use bamboo to create flexible, earthquake resilient, permanent homes, and also training the local workers in the skills of working with bamboo and developing it. Again, in the projects we're doing in the schools in Nepal, and we're active on 2 bases in Nepal. I was there earlier this month. In addition to providing wash, water, sanitation, hygiene facilities that make it easier for girls to stay in school, we also try to be smart and efficient at things like harnessing water, rain harvesting, and so on. Aransas Pass is a Texas community close to the Gulf Coast. We've completed a response activity there and have launched a recovery program. And so you may be familiar with All Hands and the work we've done. Really, All Hands as an operational unit will continue to do what it's been doing for the past 13 years. Happy Hearts Fund brings an additional fundraising capacity to us. They were fundraising in the range of maybe $3 million per year, but we really think the combination of the component of the disaster business. We've been innovative, we think, in developing treatment for mold removal, which started back in Hurricane Sandy with extensive funding for us from the Robin Hood Foundation. And again, depending on what the needs are, whether it's temporary learning centers, on the bottom left here, many of the times when projects hit people internationally, fishing communities are affected. And so early back in 2005 in Thailand, we were raising money and helping fishermen rebuild their boats there. We've done the same thing several times now in responses in the Philippines. Part of it is, the psychological impact of getting people back to work. And again, you can just see some examples of the different things we've done. Major focus, again, in this last several years, we started with our school building project in Haiti after the 2010 earthquake. Completed 20 schools there. We think we've significantly enhanced the strength of our school building program. And you can see here some examples that we have architects on staff that initially started with us as volunteers and then have moved on to be parts of our recovery staff. And we continue schools being built, and obviously it's a powerful motivational force for volunteers to be able to work together. And just as a side note, when we announced our projects in Nepal in 2015, in the next 60 days, we several thousand of those people have been with us over the past 2.5 years. I measure a lot our impact on the volunteers themselves. We do extensive volunteer surveys when someone leaves the project. We have a easy to fill out online form that we get a high degree of receptivity to. I read all those volunteer surveys to have a sense of whether we're meeting our obligations to the volunteers to provide safe but productive work. And we generally try to put our bases into the communities in which we work. And since we're there an extended period of time, we establish close relationships with the community, as you can tell, with 47,000 volunteers today. And I'm really looking forward to this symbolic level of passing through 50,000 volunteers. I think the main measure is the individual impact on each one, but multiplying that impact by 50,000 is an important thing to me about what we've been able to do in the world. Our current activities are quite extensive. When August 15th, before the onslaught of the hurricanes, we were active We did our initial responses down into the U.S. Virgin Islands and have since expanded that to the British Virgin Islands. Our Texas work has expanded from 2 bases, Houston and Aransas Path, in response to both of those moving on to recovery. We were slower deliberately in going to Puerto Rico, but we now have announced 2 bases in Puerto Rico and see an extended presence in Puerto Rico, certainly more than a year, probably 2. We're still working in Nepal. We can't work there during the monsoon season, which is basically July, August, and into September. So we'll be completing schools through the end of June, and then hope that we'll get funding, which will allow us to continue our rebuilding program in the fall. Peru, we're just completing this month or next month our final 2 schools in our Peru program. Again, to the extent we can get additional funding, we'll return. Mexico got hit by a severe earthquake, and we've committed to building our first school in Mexico in response to that earthquake. Louisiana, our project was in response first to the March 2016 flooding, then enhanced by the August 2016 flooding. We did major home recovery, 40 homes completely restored with funding from United Way, among others. But we are calling that program to a stop and moving those capabilities to Texas, where we have such significant commitments. Some of you on the phone have been great partners for us, and we appreciate that. So this is simply a list of people that have helped us over time, certainly with funding, but also people like Good 360, for example. We're going to be a vehicle that all the homes we're recovering in Texas, that Good 360 will be providing appliances and materials for those homes as an example of support. Nepal 2017, wish you were here. I guess we really try to make it easy. As I think you know, our model is simple. We don't charge volunteers anything. If they have to pay their own way to get to the project, we basically try to allow them to schedule convenient for them, and volunteers can stay as long as they wish or be as short as they wish. So our philosophy is to be flexible in working with corporate partners. We like the idea of allowing corporations to see their employees directly engaged in where their philanthropy is going. We will tailor it so that if we were in Sandy, we might have large numbers of day volunteers coming out from Manhattan. If we're in Nepal, people come and stay for a week. We are flexible, and we really are sensitive to the needs of corporations and are desirous of enhancing those relationships. And so I think you'll find us to be a thoughtful and responsive partner. And the woman who's made our partnerships work so effectively is on the line. And at this point in time, I'll, with great appreciation, turn it over to Lauren Muldowney, who's just done a spectacular job for us of both enhancing our partnership relationships and doing a wonderful job of strengthening our relatively new All Hands Alumni Network, which now has several thousand active members. So Lauren, thank you, and turn it over to you.
Thank you, David. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us, David. That was a really sort of wonderful and in-depth overview. So I'll try and keep mine as brief as possible so that we can give everyone an opportunity to ask questions. My name is Lauren. I'm the Chief of Volunteer Experience for All Hands and Hearts Smart Response. I started as a volunteer with All Hands Volunteers almost this time 4 years ago. I went to Bohol, Philippines to respond after an earthquake hit the area in October 2013, just before Typhoon Haiyan also devastated parts of the Philippines. So I started as a volunteer. I came out to volunteer with All Hands, decided I was going to give a month of time, and ended up staying 18 months as a volunteer, and kind of they decided to put me on the staff team to help engage our volunteers, given my background in development and recruitment, and now I oversee our volunteer alumni relations department, which is responsible for recruiting our volunteers, the coordination of our volunteers across programs, our volunteer and alumni engagement strategy as well. So yeah, I wanted to talk briefly about our relationship with corporations in terms of being able to come out and volunteer with us, because I think it's one of the things that differentiates us from lots of other organizations, is that not only is there the opportunity to give back in ways of gifting kind services, financial support, products or pro bono support, but we really do encourage a relationship where we have our corporations and anyone who wants to come out and volunteer with us actually come and see the work that we do on site firsthand. And what that's really resulted in is last year we had 70 different corporate partners come out and volunteer with us. And Houston is a great kind of recent example of how our corporate partnership really helped us achieve our overall goals of completing mucking, gutting, sanitation, debris removal on over 400 homes. And we had 1,700 or so volunteers join us in our Houston response, and almost 500 of those came out with corporations, whether that be as part of a corporate group or whether it be individuals who have heard of us through our corporate partnerships coming out to join us in Houston. This was an absolutely fantastic contribution from our corporate partners to allow us to kind of meet our volunteer need in the field and achieve such incredible results in terms of helping the community in Houston. As David mentioned kind of briefly there at the end, we partner from a volunteer perspective with corporations in many different ways, and we try and be as flexible as we can with our approach. I mean, there's a few of you on the line already, Medtronic being one, who are already out working with us across our programs around the world, and we have kind of testimonials from organizations about how we take a flexible approach and find new ways to work with corporations so that they can have that experience with us in the field. And a couple of ways we do that, we offer priority placement to corporate partners who want to come out and work with us. We do everything that we can, even with our kind of limited space on the base, to be able to facilitate that opportunity around times of availability for groups who want to join us. And the same with individuals. If we have individuals from our corporate partners who want to come out and join us anytime throughout the year, they don't necessarily have to be coming out with a corporate group themselves to be offered that kind of priority placement. And alongside those things, we have a great kind of marketing partnership with our social media accounts aligned with our corporate partners, our logo offered on the website and across our annual report. But I really do think that kind of the most powerful piece of this is the opportunity to come out and volunteer with us and have an authentic volunteer opportunity, working side by side with our other volunteers from across the world, of which are, from a huge diverse range of backgrounds, as well as our local workers and our beneficiaries as well. I think David covered most organizational pieces in the overall presentation, and hopefully you've got an idea of how we work together with corporate partners and also just anyone who's interested in coming out to work with us and make a difference. So I think we'll hand it over to you guys for Q&A.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you. While the others are gathering their thoughts, I do have a few questions for you. You said that there's no cost at all to the volunteer. What about care and feeding, housing, food while they're volunteering? How is that covered?
Yeah, absolutely. Our kind of a main ethos for us as an organization is to remove barriers, to allow individuals to come and help and make a difference where they want to. So we actually provide accommodation and food for all of our volunteers. We provide volunteer housing in kind of a group communal setting, as well as meals for every day worked. I mean, we provide 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the volunteers for each day that they're working, making a difference in the field.
And how about training? How do the volunteers get trained to do looks like quite physical work that's involved? I mean, in terms of the different tasks you have them do.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I wasn't sure whether David was going to answer or I should take that one myself.
Well, let me pop in and give you my view, and then you can correct it. So one of the things that's interesting is that with our 150 staff, over 100 of them are in the field, and they are really trained now disaster response professionals. On average, we have about 1 staff member for every volunteer. In addition to that, the distribution of our volunteers on a base, a typical project is maybe 100 people. That might be 15 staff, 75 volunteers. We hire local construction people. So the staff has good construction management skills. Of the 75 volunteers, my normal average is about a third of them, 25, are long-term or multi-project all-hands alumni who've been on multiple projects, know how we organize, know how we manage safety, and so on and so forth. Another 25 are generally there for a medium period of time, maybe as long as 3 to 4 weeks. And then another 25 are relatively fresh volunteers, maybe 1 week or less. And so our team leaders basically will have enough experience to show someone as we start the day how we're going to manage a wheelbarrow, mix cement, et cetera, et cetera. So it's to a great extent of experienced people one-on-one giving direct hands-on daily exposure and working side by side with people so they learn the safe ways to do it. And we've become, I believe, really quite expert at breaking complex projects like building a school down into simple tasks like 3 people feeding a cement mixer so that we can produce a constant flow of cement to feed a team who knows how to pour a flat cement floor. So, but I think part of it is just this recognition that of the 100 or so people on a project, there's a substantial amount of expertise included among that group. Lauren, you have anything you want to add to that?
No, absolutely, David. You pretty much summed it up there. I think it is kind of important. It's a question that I get asked a lot when talking to people who are interested in coming out to volunteer with us. They're always like, how am I going to be effective in the field? I don't have any experience. So yeah, that kind of dedicated time that we have to training and support for our volunteers, and also the fact that we kind of map our work out to be able to allow people of all different experience levels to contribute to the project. And exactly as David said, if you can pour the cement into the cement mixer, then there's a job that needs to be done that we have a volunteer to do. And then that ranges from anything from, carrying and lifting, and there's a variety of tasks on site. So there's always something for everyone to be able to participate. And it really is that kind of team and collaborative effort across the different range of skills, which I think is incredibly special about what we do in the field.
Is there a particular skill that you are seeking that perhaps you've been lacking?
We are always looking for chainsaw specialists in a response. So it does seem to be a common one. We have quite a few of our alumni are chainsaw trained and specialists, and I think that we really the scale of how many people we actually needed to do that work increased kind of tenfold as the hurricanes hit over towards the fall time last year. So at that time we were kind of specifically seeking chainsaw specialists and making sure that we had people like on a roster ready to go in case that we were presented with that scenario again.
Interesting, interesting. Which begs my next question: how about insurance? Do you have a policy that covers a corporate volunteer, or does their company cover them?
So it's, I think in most cases, the corporation, I have found working with multiple corporations that in most cases, the corporations have a policy to cover their volunteers. Internationally, we have a policy that covers all of our volunteers who are kind of traveling abroad to volunteer with us. So if we have a corporation from the US traveling to Nepal or Peru, our partnership with our insurance provider Aetna covers kind of all cases of emergency injury and illness, and that's something that we've kind of worked really hard as an organization to prioritize over the years, given the nature of the work that we do.
Oh, excellent, excellent.
And it does include medical evacuation also. And in our early years, maybe the first 10 years or so, we required our volunteers to individually procure insurance, and then we decided about 2+ years ago that it would be more efficient and frankly give us more negotiating influence with the carrier if we instead put in a single group plan to cover all volunteers. And so we started that several years ago, and that's been effective. It's been tested, and it works well for us. And we don't add any, again, we chose to simply absorb that cost ourselves.
Great, great. And what happens, I notice, when a disaster strikes? I know I get lots of calls like, how do we help? How do we get involved? And a lot of organizations say, you need a relationship with an organization such as yours before disaster strikes. But perhaps it's different with you. Say something happens tomorrow. Can a company call you and say, we've got volunteers? How does it work in terms of timing?
Absolutely. So in the very, very initial stages, as you mentioned, we also receive a lot of interest from both individuals and organizations, corporations that want to come out and help. And I think we try and be effective as soon as we possibly can on the ground. And we ask for, a very short period to get ourselves up and running as we start to process our applications and look at inviting volunteers. So if something happened tomorrow, what we do is kind of gather all of the interest from those who are willing to come out and help and kind of get their hands dirty immediately, and we provide kind of a time frame of around when we can make that happen. And it might be a week, kind of based on getting all of our tools, materials, and base set up and ready to accept volunteers, or it might be sooner. It could be just a couple of days, and we stay in touch with the applicant, whether it be an individual or somebody representing a group or a corporation, and kind of walk through that process of applying to be able to come out and help with us, and getting the invitation out with them to get them out to us in the field as soon as possible, to be able to start making and having an impact there.
Great. And what is the priority project, if you do have one big one right now that's underway?
So we've just launched our program in Puerto Rico, as David mentioned. We already have a few large partnerships with corporations who have decided to come out and join us there over the coming months. And we're welcoming volunteers not only across our programs in Texas, the Virgin Islands, and Nepal, Peru, but also kind of this massive need that there is in Puerto Rico. So I would say if people are looking to come out and volunteer with us, we have plenty of volunteer options, obviously depending on your location and preference. But Puerto Rico really is kind of a big new response for us, where we'll be facilitating over 150 volunteers per day in the field there to have an impact on those immediate response activities across 2 locations in Puerto Rico.
Great. And it seems like you'll be there for quite a while in Puerto Rico. Correct. Since you say you stay long, right?
Absolutely.
Great. So let me give the others a chance. Just raise your hand here or indicate that you want to say something so I can unmute you. Or perhaps I asked all the best questions.
Well, we'd be happy to have some more.
I'm wondering also if you do a debrief with volunteers after a project is over. You said that you solicit their opinion. I'm curious how you do that.
Yeah, we have on each site of ours, we have a dedicated volunteer relations coordinator, and they're kind of positioned within the program to provide support to our volunteers as they kind of spend time with us throughout the project or the program. As their time as a volunteer comes to an end, we have kind of a debrief and exit conversation with the volunteers. We provide them with the opportunity to give feedback on a range of topics, everything from kind of the work in the field to our operational kind of base setup and larger organizational pieces too, and to do so in an anonymous fashion if they so wish, so that it really does, allowing people to give their feedback anonymously really helps us kind of solicit feedback from a high number of volunteers. We actually find that we have over 75% feedback rate from people who are departing our programs, and then we collate that feedback and share it with the wider management team and our board to, as David says, he reads through them thoroughly every couple of weeks because there's always kind of lots of questions from the team off of the back of that volunteer feedback, and we kind of pick out themes there to address with our teams, and figure out how we can work in the best way and improve in different areas based off of this feedback that we get from volunteers, which is hugely positive. 99 or plus % say that they would come back out to volunteer with us, that they would recommend us to a friend or family, that overall they enjoyed their experience with us. But it is also a place for them to provide constructive feedback in areas where they think that we can improve.
Oh, excellent, excellent.
The other thing that's unusual about the way we actually operate is at the end of every day, everybody before dinner sits and goes through an all hands meeting, hence the name, and where we review every team reports just quickly, orally, a minute or so on what their team did that day. And so that if there's 8 teams out in the field, there's a quick 1 or 2 minute report of this went right, this didn't go right, so people have an awareness of what's going on across the entire project. And again, just as a order of magnitude, so a project will be in the scale of 60 to 100 people. The cost of a project like that for us is about $100,000 a month. So we have a very active fundraising, and candidly, we do. One of our reasons for being excited about corporate relationships is then we look to those corporate partners for financial support, not necessarily tied directly to their individuals coming out, but they see what we do, they see the needs in the community, and we found the people that become corporate partners have become long-term, very stable, strong sources of support for us, because obviously at the end of the day, we need to go out and raise the funds to meet our expense levels. Right now, we had significant fund flow in after the hurricanes, and so we're strongly funded to be able to make the long-term commitments we have. But we'd like to continue to increase the number of partnerships, get commitments for funding, which will allow us to extend both the breadth of what we're doing and the length of what we're doing. That's the model that we're aggressively working toward.
Great, great. Letitia, I wonder, did you want to comment on what Medtronic is doing with All Hands and Hearts? I've unmuted you in case you'd like to comment.
Sure. I'll be happy to comment. So we've been partnering with All Hands and Hearts for 3+ years now, and the partnership just keeps evolving. All Hands and Hearts and each of the people that I've worked with have been super open line of communications, flexible, understand the needs where we're coming from a corporate perspective, and helping us fill the needs that we have while achieving the impact that they continue to have each disaster. We're currently partnered with them for Puerto Rico, and we're hoping to send volunteers in there over the next several weeks. And we're kind of promoting week-long opportunities. We offer employees 5 days of paid time off to volunteer for disaster relief organization or activity. So we're promoting those 5 days of paid time off with All Hands and Hearts. And we've done something similar in the past with Louisiana, and we've done Texas, and we've received nothing but great feedback from our employees. So we're pleased with the partnership, and our employees are equally pleased, and always looking for opportunities to be able to volunteer with All Hands and Hearts.
Great, thank you for sharing that. And thank you, David and Lauren, for being part of our webinar today. We appreciate the information. And I will make sure that all the participants have your slides, also the other members of our working group. And I know your last slide has information on how to get in touch with you. So thank you so much, and hope you have a good day. We're going to move on to Melissa Robinson, who actually has been in Puerto Rico recently. So I'm going to unmute Melissa and give her a chance to tell us about her experience there.
Great, thank you, Lori. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to kind of come and share with you. I know we have Letitia on the line from Medtronic. Not sure if Jennifer or Sylvia are on, or Joe from UPS, but they all joined the same disaster delegation trip that I was on last week with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. So please, if I miss anything, folks, feel free to jump in and provide updates as well. Just really quickly, from a Hilton perspective, we have 12 properties in Puerto Rico, nearly 7,000 team members. So it was really important for us, to go and check in on the status of our team members. We issued support to nearly 3,500 team members. And so really, I went down a couple of days early to kind of check in on the status and see how everyone was doing. From that perspective, the biggest thing that I heard from our team members, I think San Juan really seems to be in a bubble, if you will, that a lot of things in San Juan look and feel relatively normal. A lot of our hotels are open and, willing and waiting to accept guests to come back and tourists to come back. So I think the San Juan piece is, if you go to San Juan, it will look relatively normal, and it is. Things are up and running, and there's definitely a few of our properties there that have still been impacted, that are closed, that aren't accepting guests. A lot of our hotels in the region are currently housing FEMA and other aid organizations as they go and do some of the work there. We know that FEMA is leaving in the next few days or so. And so we'll see kind of what happens there. But I will say the message from our hotels is, please tell people to come and visit Puerto Rico, because that really is the driving force for team members there, and the economy, as you all know. So, really, I think it really opened my eyes to when we went on the corporate delegation trip that was sponsored by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, really taking a look at disaster assistance and recovery. As you all probably know, more than 10,000 homes in Puerto Rico lost their roofs. That number has dwindled down due to the efforts from organizations like FEMA, where they've come to put on tarp roofs or new kind of metal roofing and thatching that way. But we're still looking at, nearly 40% of the population is still without power. And I saw that firsthand with our team members. We have many team members that are coming into work in San Juan that live in the hills, that live in different barrios and wards that still do not have power. And so I think that's one of the things that is still happening, still going on, still very relevant. Another piece that I thought was quite interesting as we were on our tour throughout Puerto Rico, we did see the National Guard in there still delivering water. And so I think that's interesting in my eyes that we are so far past August that everything had happened, and we're still in a space where bottled water is still being delivered and absolutely needed. So I think there's definitely a need. The need is still there. The need is still very, very present. And so I think that's one of the things that a lot of the communities are really fighting with. We took a tour of Cano Martin Peña, which before Hurricanes Irma and Maria was already facing some pretty significant safety challenges, public health challenges, and kind of an inadequate lack of infrastructure, poor housing conditions and that such. So we went there and kind of visited. So post-hurricane, it's, as you can imagine, 10 times worse. 800 families just in Cano Martin Peña have lost their roofs. Nearly 70% of that community was flooded with wastewater for as long as 4 days. So when we talk about kind of the public health issues that Puerto Rico is going to face, a lot of this really stems from the water that was sitting, the wastewater that was sitting for 4, 5, 7 days. And so we visited a lot of these areas that are really just starting to try and figure out a little bit of normalcy. It's not uncommon to see rodent traps out, and that's an absolute necessary thing, simply because of the amount of flooding that was there. And so we're really organizations that are really trying to manage rodent infestation, unclean water, and if you're along kind of the Cano Martin Peña area, it is an area that's serviced by kind of a stream, if you will, but it's not proper drinking water. So people who are going without proper drinking water are really bathing and drinking kind of whatever water that they can, which is causing another ripple effect as well. So I think that was very eye-opening to me. Cano Martin Peña itself is just under a 4-mile stretch of 8 communities, and it's along a path outside of Puerto Rico, outside of San Juan. And so I think for us kind of walking through, there's definite community organizations that are there trying to help, get schools back up and running, make sure that kids have some type of normalcy and can go to school. The community organizations there themselves are really working with everyone in the community to help get the basic necessities, get a roof back on the home. Like I said, this is definitely one of those areas where power is not accessible at this time. Another one of the stops that we made was at Health Pro Med. It's a federally qualified community health center. And a lot of the work there is being done through the CDC and the CDC Foundation. It's a beautiful facility, and really in the time of these hurricanes really provided a home base for so many things. They were up and running within 72 hours of the hurricanes via generators and such, and they've really kind of been a hub for immunizations, for clean drinking water, any of those things that you can think of that would really need to happen directly in the aftermath. They were an information source, and they'd never turn anyone away regardless of kind of insurance status. So it was great to see the beauty of the organization, but also the organization itself of that health center really working and doing their best. They go out into the community. A lot of it is very grassroots driven. If you're looking at communities that don't have power, so email doesn't work and phone calls and those types of things. So a lot of it was knocking on doors, providing people with clean drinking water, providing people with bug spray and repellent and netting for their beds and for their homes. And so I think those are the kind of things, as we look as an organization, Hilton, how do we go and help our team members in Puerto Rico? I think we really have to relook at, what a volunteer opportunity for us would look like. It might be grassroots, something that we haven't done in quite some time, but I think it's absolutely needed. And we're seeing that, from their experience there at the health center and with the CDC, that's been quite successful of getting people to come in, get vaccinations, and really kind of share if they're in need of medicines or anything like that. So that was really great. During our trip, we did have people join us on the bus that kind of gave us updates around what they're doing in Puerto Rico. Save the Children was one of the organizations that was there with us and really talked to us about all the work that they're doing. The school system there, because of the power outages and because of everything that's happened, the schools have not opened back to capacity. And so that's one of the things that was really quite troubling to a lot of us on the trip, that you might have, 250 schools, whereas that was pre-hurricane, and post, you're operating only maybe like 120 schools. So there's a large group of kids that are not back in school. So they're working really hard to get those schools back up and running. We did meet with the Minister of Education there, really just kind of talking about what her ideal is and what her plan is for the future. And her plan for the future is really to take a look at those schools. They might not reopen schools. They might take a look and say which of these schools have been performing the best, and figure out a way to rezone, if you will, some of the schools that the local children will go to. But again, there's cultural differences from if you live in the mountains versus if you live in San Juan. And so I think they're going through a bit of just some growing pains in that space as well. One of the really great pieces of our trip was a transitional housing construction site in Loíza by an organization called Techo. And so what they do at Techo, they really take a look at, houses. They surveyed 24 wards, if you will, kind of post-hurricane in 12 municipalities there in Puerto Rico. And they identified over 250 families that were under dire and urgent housing needs. And so we met with a woman. She was gracious enough to really kind of show us her old home and then allow us to come in her new space as well. Her name was Flavia. And when the floods came in, floodwaters reached 5 feet, and her house was elevated. So think of it hit the elevation, but then it reached 5 feet above that elevation. So it was, the floodwaters really just took over her home, and of course ruined everything. So she stayed with friends and family until they could get back in. She had floodwaters in her home at that level for nearly 7 days. And so she was gracious enough to let us in. Both her old location and her new location is actually being built at the same level as her old home, and right in front of her old as her old house, so that she can kind of transition between the two. And so Techo's an organization. It's a volunteer construction crew where they go in and they work with the residents there to help build and rebuild their home. So her house is definitely built. There's definitely things that they're fixing and kind of finishing up. But she's just one of, many families, like I said, over 250 families that are in need of new housing entirely. Again, that was another area where power is not available. They're actually not necessarily on that area that we were in, is not really a recognized neighborhood or ward, if you will. So getting power to that location, it's going to be even longer, as opposed to kind of, some of the locations that are recognized by the local government, where this is kind of a ward and a neighborhood that's just really popped up. And there were quite a few families in that area all looking and needing, new homes. So 2,000 families in that space there suffered partial structural damages to their home, like I said, with more than 250 really having dire urgent housing needs. So I don't want to be too long. I know we've got kind of a time limit here today, but I just wanted to just reiterate a couple of facts. I think San Juan is a bubble. Most things look relatively good and things are up and running, but as you really get out into the hills and to where a large majority of the population lives, they're still without power, they're still without clean, fresh drinking water. So there's a lot of work that absolutely needs to be done. I'm super excited to hear All Hands and Hearts and kind of their vision and what they're doing in Puerto Rico. Happy that they'll be there. We will be there. Like I said, we offered support and provided aid to over 3,500 team members in Puerto Rico. We do have a lot of hotels that are not open, that are, in Ponce, that are in kind of the eastern, part of Puerto Rico. So we definitely are impacted. We definitely have a lot of team members that have been furloughed, excuse me, that we have not done in the past. So we have a large number of our team members that have been furloughed, and those team members live in the hills and live in some of those areas that, don't have power and don't have the clean drinking water. Save the Children has a lot of projects that are in the pipeline. They have projects they've been able to fund, daycare projects, nonprofit, like foster homes, a lot of things, but there's also projects in the pipeline that they definitely need funding for. So there's definite opportunity, I will say. And, for us, I know internally from a Hilton perspective, we're looking at ways in which, if we have an upcoming team meeting, can we go to Puerto Rico and change our location and really try and feed some of that economy and bring that back, because that's what so many people depend on. Two of my favorite hotels, that I visited when I was there, the Caribe Hilton and Condado Plaza. Our Caribe Hilton is not operational at all right now. Our ownership group was in and really just trying to understand if we'll even reopen that hotel. That's how damaged the hotel was, which is quite sad. It's a beautiful hotel and one of our first there. And then Condado Plaza, it's a 2-tower hotel currently servicing FEMA and other aid workers. The one tower of the hotel is completely closed, but the other half is. So I think there's definitely bright spots in as you look at it. I think there's huge opportunity to kind of level set and hopefully provide a stronger infrastructure for the region and for the territory. But I do just want to, be sure that everyone's aware there's so much work that still needs to be done. And a lot of it starts with tourism and people coming back to visit, but also people being thoughtful about the volunteer opportunities that they do while they're there. We're looking at, doing a possible kind of disaster preparedness kit for all of our team members as we approach hurricane season here in the next 6 months. It will be right around the corner before we know it, but hopefully providing team members with the most things that they needed immediately after hurricane hit: batteries, bug spray, netting, flashlights, those types of things. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and like I said, if anyone from UPS or Medtronic that was on the trip is on this call and felt like I missed something, please feel free to jump in. But thank you again, Lori, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Melissa. That was really a very thorough description, and boy, it's worse than I've even read about. So thank you for giving us that perspective. Lots to do, lots of volunteer opportunities. And I think what happens is once a site or disaster is out of the news, it can be easily forgotten. So it's important that we not forget. There's a lot left to be done to help these people.
Absolutely.
Lots of volunteer opportunities. So thank you for an excellent briefing here. Any comments or questions for Melissa? I think if there aren't today, people know how to get in touch with you through the GCVC network.
Yes, absolutely.
So definitely appreciate your presentation, Melissa. And actually, I stayed at the Caribe Hilton years ago, so I'm really disappointed that it might not be coming back. That was a great hotel. Great hotel.
Yeah, it really is one of my favorites. And I'll send you a picture afterwards afterwards, feel free to share with everyone on the call. But it really is unrecognizable to I'm sure what you stayed at it looking like, and me too. But I'll send a few photos after this that you can absolutely share with everyone on the call.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you. So we have a few minutes left, and if the group would like to have a roundtable discussion, I have a few questions, or we can put this off to our next call. I wondered how others are preparing to respond to the next disaster, because unfortunately we know there will be one. Any discussion, or anyone want to talk about what ongoing work you are doing in preparedness, and any general questions for the group? So you can just give me a hand here. I can unmute you, or if the group would prefer to keep this for our next call, that's okay too. So, not seeing any. Letitia, is that your hand from before? I think perhaps we've heard a lot of great information today, and maybe we'll save our questions for the next working group webinar. I'd just like to thank everyone for their participation. Thank you for David, Lauren, Melissa for sharing. You've really enriched our knowledge here. And we have recorded this webinar, and we'll make it available to the other members of the working group. So thank you, everyone, and we will be in touch soon.